Next is death and respawning. The idea is he's on a platform and he can get punched off by the robots, or he can fall off because he's not careful enough, and we'll want him to respawn. So when he falls off, he respawns at different respawn points. So the first thing we're going to need is something to catch him, to trigger that he's fallen off and it's time to be respawned back up here. So we're going to make a game object, go create empty, and we'll call it exactly, because I do think that it's referred to in the code. So fallout catcher, exactly that way. And we're going to add to it something to trigger, and that is it actually, that it's been hit, a box collider. So box collider, and we'll make it as triggers to make sure. I don't know if that makes a difference or not. And then we're going to make it bigger in terms of size, so the X and not the Y. We don't need it to be that way. We need it to be the Z. Bigger and bigger. And actually at this point I'm going to go from the top view, zoom out, and make it nice and big. So I'm going to go to R for changing the scale of the X and Z. Make it nice and big. Not going to hurt to make it too big, so there we go. And I'm going to move it, W, so that's good. Plenty big enough. Now looking at it from the side and placing it down, not quite to the clouds, that's probably good enough. So he falls off and he hits this and he comes back up. So that's going to need a script, and the script is fallout death. Onto the fallout catcher, check to see if it needs any variables. No, it doesn't. So now we need some place for the player to respawn, and this is where we're going to use a prefab called respawn prefab. Here we go. I'll move a few of them on, and you'll scatter these around naturally with the whole level. And before this will work, we're going to need another script, and that's a script that controls the status of the player. So some sort of a status, third person status. Third person status goes on to the player. And again, check that out whenever you move a script. Do we need anything here? Third person status. Struck sound, death sound. Looks like I'd already done this before, and sometimes you'll do this. I did this because I practiced this once before doing this, so I'm going to just remove this. But remember, lerp sound. Okay, so I'm going to remove this component. And this will be a problem too, because I've got two scripts of exactly the same. So I'm going to remove component. Right, so what I did find doing the dry run of this is that I need two sounds. Struck sound, when he's struck by a robot. And this has nothing to do with the respawning, but it has to do with the script, which controls several things. And the death sound was something scream. There. Alright, so everything else is fine. Lives and so on are fine. So now let's just see if it works. So we'll move off. Yep, it does. Something there that we'll fix right next, and you'll notice that he is always going to respawn to the same one, which isn't the way you want the game to play, right? That's the one by the pole. So what we're going to do is make an initial respawn to be, maybe not that one, maybe this one. Which one is this? Well, I haven't named them yet, so let's call this 1, that 2, and that 3. And then we'll say the initial respawn, we'll just force the initial respawn to be this one that's not by the light poles, so we'll know it's this one. So, and that one is prefab 1. So all three of these, we're going to make the initial respawn to be 1. This isn't a big deal, this part, but it's the way the game plays best. So prefab 1 is the only place you can respawn to. So check this out. So now I'm not going to respawn there. I'm always going to respawn there. And you don't always want to respawn there, so just trust me that you will always respawn there. So that's the initial respawn. So the idea is you've got to go to other respawn points and actually jump on them, the way the game plays, to activate them. So now, I can move around the platform by, when I die, because I'll go to different ones that I've activated already. And yeah, so now having gone there, let's just play this and show you. Well, it's too late. Play around with that. I think you'll get the idea. The other thing I've noticed, though, is that we've got these 3 respawn points, and you're probably going to have more, so it's going to clutter up your hierarchy. So let's make a folder. And you make a folder not through FOL or whatever. You create empty, and you're going to call it something that's appropriate, like respawn points, and drag them in. Shift select them, drag them in, just to keep things a little bit more neat and tidy. And the only other thing I thought that might be cool for you to play around with is that these all have particle systems, several particle systems. So if I take one of these and look inside, you'll see here's active, here's inactive. So inactive is just the way that it is when it's just bubbling away and you're walking around it. So check this out. Back to our animator. I'll make this a bunch of reds and pinks, and you'll see how different it looks. Starting to look a bit different there, right? The thing is, though, this is per respawn point, and so if you wanted to make all of them a nifty color, and you imagine you can do some really cool things with this, and here's how it looks when you respawn, and so on. If you wanted to do this, you'd have to change one of them on the stage and then drag it down over the respawn prefab and replace it. So you basically have to delete that one and take the one you've messed around with, played around with, and move it back down into props. But you don't have to do that. That's just something to do if you got ahead. And so anyway, that's it for respawning.